Ambassador Sarah Chun walked through the crystal halls of Nexus Station. Her shoes made soft sounds on the clear floor. Below her feet she could see stars spinning slowly in the darkness of space. The station was huge, bigger than most cities. On Earth, it had taken humans 50 years to build it, and another 50 to convince 400 alien species to meet here. Today was supposed to be special. Today, the last of the big wars would finally end. The Zephyrian Empire and the hegemony of Scar were going to sign a peace treaty. No more fighting, no more dead worlds. No more refugees running from one system to another, looking for safety. Sarah stopped at a large window. Outside, she could see ships from dozens of different worlds. Long, thin Zephyrian cruisers that looked like silver needles. Round Meridian vessels that moved like underwater creatures even in space. The dark, angular ships of the Scar hegemony. All sharp edges and gun barrels. For 200 years, humans had worked to make this moment happen. They had fought in wars to protect smaller species. They had built trade routes to connect distant worlds. They had created laws that all species could follow. They had made peace where there had been only war. A soft chime sounded in her earpiece. "Ambassador," said a voice. "The hegemony delegation has arrived." Sarah turned away from the window. She walked down a long corridor lined with symbols from every member species of the Galactic Accords. Human writing was there too, in dozens. Of languages from Earth, Chinese characters next to Swahili words next to ancient Latin phrases. All of them said the same thing in different ways. Peace is possible. The main meeting hall was enormous. The ceiling stretched up so high it disappeared into shadow. Seats were arranged in circles, each one designed for a different kind of alien body. Some species breathed water, so their seats were filled with liquid. Others needed high pressure, or low gravity or special gases. Sarah took her place at the human section. Around her sat the other human ambassadors. Next to her was James Park, who had spent 30 years learning to speak with the insect-like collective. Across from her was Maria Santos, who knew more about Zephyrian culture than most Zephyrians. The Zephyrian delegation entered first. They were tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large dark eyes. Their leader, High Speaker Zarthan, had been working with humans for over a century. He nodded to Sarah as he took his seat. Then came the others. The meridians flowed in like living water, their translucent bodies shifting and changing shape. The collective delegates moved as one group, their insect bodies clicking and humming as they communicated. Dozens of other species filled the hall, with colors and sounds and smells that reminded Sarah why this work was so important. The hegemony delegation entered last. They always did. It was a power move, making everyone else wait. Warcast Commander Vexthal led them in. He was massive, even for a Scar. His thick gray skin was covered in ritual scars that told the story of his victories. His forearms ended in claws that could cut through metal. His small red eyes looked at the other delegates like a predator. Counting prey. Behind him came 12 other Scar warriors. They wore no diplomatic robes, only their battle armor. Their weapons were supposed to be left outside the station, but Sarah could see the bulges where hidden knives were strapped to their bodies. Sarah had read Vexthal's file many times. He commanded over 3,000 ships. He had conquered 47 worlds for the hegemony. He believed that strong species should rule weak ones, and that peace was just a word weak species used when they were too afraid to fight. But he was here. That was what mattered. After 10 years of talks, he was finally ready to sign the treaty. High Speaker Zarthan stood up. His voice was soft, but it carried clearly through the hall. "We gather today to end the last great war of this age," he sighed. "For too long, the Outer Rim has burned with conflict. Today we choose peace." Other delegates spoke. They talked about trade and cooperation and shared goals. Sarah listened, but she kept watching Vexthal. The big Scar warrior sat perfectly still. His red eyes moved constantly, studying every face in the room. Finally, it was time for the signing. The treaty itself was a work of art, written on sheets of crystallized energy that would last forever. It promised that the hegemony would stop attacking the smaller species in the Outer Rim. In return, those species would be allowed to join. The Galactic Accords under human protection, one by one, the delegates signed. Some used pens, others used claws or tentacles or energy beams. Each signature glowed for a moment before becoming permanent. Vexthel was last. He stood slowly, his massive body unfolding from the specially built chair. He walked to the treaty table with heavy steps. For a moment, he just stared down at the crystal sheets. Then he picked up the signing tool. It looked tiny in his huge clawed hand. He pressed it to the crystal and made his mark. The signature glowed bright red for several seconds, then faded to silver. "It is done," High Speaker Zarthan announced. "Peace has come to the Outer Rim." The hall erupted in celebration. Delegates from hundreds of species cheered and sang and made whatever sounds their people made when they were happy. Sarah felt tears in her eyes. After so many years of work, so many failed negotiations, so many setbacks, they had finally done it. She stood up to congratulate Vexthel, but the big warrior was already walking away. He moved through the celebrating crowd like a ship cutting. Through water, his red eyes looked straight ahead. He did not smile or speak to anyone. That should have been a warning. 3 days later, Sarah was in her office reviewing trade agreements when the alarm started. Emergency lights flashed red. Her communication screen activated automatically, showing Admiral Torres from the Terran Defense Force. "Ambassador," he said. His face was pale and tight with anger. "We have a problem, a big one." The screen split to show multiple views, star maps with red symbols spreading like a disease. Battle reports flooding in from across the Outer Rim, ship logs that cut off in the middle of distress calls. 17 worlds, Torres said. "All attacked at the same time, all under our protection by the new treaty." The hegemony hit them with everything they had. Sarah felt cold. Survivors? None. They didn't try to conquer the planets. They just, killed them. 3 billion people dead in the first hour. Men, women, children, doesn't matter to them. The screen showed images that would haunt Sarah's dreams for the rest of her life. Burning cities, melted settlements, radioactive craters where towns used to be. The hegemony had not just broken the treaty. They had used it as a target list. "There's more," Torres said. "Vexthel sent a message, broadcasting it on all frequencies." The screen changed to show the massive Scar Warrior standing on the bridge of his flagship. Behind him, Sarah could see his fleet. Thousands of dark ships arranged in perfect battle formation. "Weak species of the galaxy," Vexthel said. "You believe the humans could protect you. You believe their promises of peace and safety. Today, you learned the truth. The strong rule the weak. This is the natural order. The humans are weak, and soon they will be dead. Submit to the hegemony now, and your deaths will be quick." The message ended. Sarah stared at the blank screen, her hands shaking. Everything they had built was falling apart. 200 years of careful diplomacy, hundreds of treaties, thousands of trade agreements. All of it breaking down because one species decided that murder was easier than peace. Her communication device chimed. "Another call from Torres, Ambassador," he said. "You need to see this. The other species, they're not taking this well." The screen showed emergency sessions in dozens of alien governments. Panic in the Zephyrian Council chambers. Fear in the Meridian depths. Confusion among the collective hives. Peace had failed. And now Sarah had to watch as everything humans had worked for crumbled into dust and blood and the laughter of predators who had never wanted peace at all. The news spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. On every world and every space station, beings gathered around communication screens to watch the reports coming in from the Outer Rim. The images were always the same. Dead worlds, burned cities. Empty space where colonies used to be. High Speaker Zarthan sat in the crystal chambers of the Zephyrian homeworld, watching the reports with his council. The tall, pale aliens moved restlessly around the room. Their large dark eyes reflected the horrible images on the screens. 3 billion dead, said Council Member Yafara. Her voice was soft, like all Zephyrian voices, but it shook with emotion. They were under human protection. The treaty promised they would be safe. Zarthan touched his long fingers together, a gesture his people made when thinking deeply. He had worked with humans for over a century. He knew Sarah Chun personally. He had believed in the peace they were building together. The hegemony planned this, he said. They signed the treaty only to get a list of targets. They never meant to honor it. On the screens, Admiral Torres was giving a statement from Earth. The human looked tired and angry. Behind him, other human officers moved quickly, preparing for war. We will respond to this attack, Torres said. The Terran Defense Force is mobilizing. We will not let this crime go unpunished. But Zarthan could see the numbers. The hegemony had over 4,000 ships. The human fleet was strong, but it was spread thin across hundreds of worlds. The Scar had struck first and struck hard. Human outer defenses were already gone. Council member Yathara moved closer to the main screen. What do we do? She asked. The humans are our allies. They need our help. Zarthan was quiet for a long time. The Zephyrian fleet was the second largest in the galaxy. Their ships were fast and well armed. Combined with human forces, they could match the hegemony, but the cost would be enormous. Millions of Zephyrian lives, maybe billions. And even if they won, what then? The hegemony would not surrender. They would fight to the last ship, the last world, the last warrior. Send a message of support to Earth, Zarthan said finally. Express our outrage at this attack. Promise that we stand with humanity in this dark hour. That is all? Yathara asked. Zarthan looked at her with sad eyes. For now. On the water world of Meridia, the Depth Lords gathered in their deepest councils. The aquatic beings moved through liquid chambers, their translucent bodies glowing with bioluminescent patterns that showed their emotions. Right now, those patterns were all fear and confusion. Depth Lord Krillin had been one of the first aliens to work with humans. He remembered when Earth ships first came to Meridia, offering trade and friendship instead of conquest. The humans had helped his people develop new technologies. They had protected Meridian colonies from raiders, but protection was a two-way promise. When someone protects you, you are supposed to protect them back. The humans saved us from the Void Hunters 30 years ago, said Depth Lord Moritha. Her light patterns pulsed with memory of that terrible war. Without their help, our species would be extinct. Yes, Krillin replied. But the Void Hunters were pirates with a few dozen ships. The hegemony has thousands. This is not the same thing. The council chamber filled with conflicting light patterns as the Meridians argued. Some wanted to honor their debt to humanity. Others pointed out that the Meridians had only 300 military vessels. Against the hegemony's massive fleet, they would be destroyed quickly. We could offer support ships, suggested Depth Lord Vanaller. Medical vessels, supply transports, rescue craft. The humans do not need bandages, Moritha said. They need warships. Then they need more warships than we can give them, Krillin said sadly. In the hive worlds of the collective, billions of insect minds processed the information as one. The attack on the refugee colonies was analyzed from every angle. Combat projections were calculated. Resource requirements were estimated. Political implications were considered. The conclusion was always the same. The hegemony was too strong. The humans could not win. Helping them would only add the collective to the list of the dead, but some of the hive minds disagreed. Worker Prime. Zekthorn had spent years trading with human merchants. The humans were different from other species. They did not see the collective as monsters or tools. They treated individual insects with respect, even though the insects themselves did not. Think of themselves as individuals. The humans have surprised everyone before, Zekthorn transmitted to the main hive mind. They are resourceful. They adapt. They find ways to win when winning seems impossible. They are also outnumbered 10-1, replied the War Prime. Courage. Cannot overcome mathematics. Perhaps not, Zekthorn said. But should we not try? The humans would try for us. The hive mind considered this. It was true. Humans had defended collective worlds during the Plague Wars. They had shared medical technology freely. They had never asked for anything except friendship in return, but friendship had limits. And those limits did not include species suicide. Hundreds of other worlds, similar conversations were happening. The Tory Confederation met in emergency session. The Crystal Singers held their harmonic councils. The Iron Brotherhood calculated the costs of war. Everyone reached the same conclusion. Helping humanity was the right thing to do. It was also impossible. Fleet Admiral Marcus Torres stood on the bridge of the Terran flagship, watching status reports flood in from across human space. The outer defense stations were gone. 15 human colonies were under direct attack. The hegemony fleet was advancing toward the core worlds like a dark tide. His communication officer turned to him. "Sir, we're getting messages from our allies." Torres felt a moment of hope. "Fleet movements? Battle plans?" "No, sir," the officer said quietly. "Expressions of sympathy. Offers of humanitarian aid. Requests for refugee assistance." Torres was quiet for a moment. Then he laughed, but there was no humor in it. "They're offering to help with the cleanup after we're dead. Sir, the Zephyrian High Speaker is requesting a private communication." "Put him through." Zarthan's pale face appeared on the main screen. The alien looked genuinely sad. "Admiral Torres, I wish we were speaking under better circumstances." "So do I," Torres replied. "Are you going to help us or not? We dot." "The Zephyrian Council is still debating the best course of action." "That's politician talk for no." Zarthan's large eyes seemed to dim. "The hegemony is too strong, Marcus. If we fight them, we will lose. Both our species will be extinct. So your plan is to let them pick us off one by one? Our plan is to survive? And to hope that you find a way to survive too." Torres cut the connection. Around him, his bridge crew worked silently. They had all heard the conversation. They all understood what it meant. More messages came in throughout the day. The Meridians offered medical support. The collective promised to take human refugees. The Tory expressed their deep regret. The Crystal Singers sang mournful songs across the quantum frequencies, but no one offered warships. No one offered to fight. No one was willing to risk their own people to save humanity. Torres pulled up a strategic map of the galaxy. Red symbols showed hegemony forces advancing on all fronts. Blue symbols marked human positions, falling back toward Earth. Green symbols represented their allies. All the green symbols were moving away from the fight. "Sir," his tactical officer said, "long-range sensors are detecting massive hegemony fleet movements." "They're converging on the Sol system," Torres nodded. "Time to arrival? 6 weeks, assuming current speed. 6 weeks to prepare for the end of everything. 6 weeks to figure out how to fight an enemy that outnumbered them 10-1. 6 weeks to do it alone while the galaxy watched and counted the cost of helping in lives they were not willing to spend." Torres looked around his bridge, at the men and women who would die fighting beside him. Good people, brave people. People who deserved better allies than they had. "Send a message to all human commanders," he said. "Full recall, every ship, every station, every asset. Bring everyone home." "Sir, what about our forward bases?" "Abandon them. If we're going to make our last stand, we'll make it at Earth. Let the galaxy watch us die fighting for our home." "Maybe they'll remember what that looks like." The officer hesitated. "And our allies?" Torres looked at the green symbols on the map, all of them retreating to safe distances where they could observe without participating. "Our allies can watch from wherever they feel comfortable. Apparently that's all they're good for." Ambassador Sarah Chun stood alone in the great assembly hall of Nexus Station. The huge room that had once held representatives from 400 species was almost empty now. Only a few dozen aliens remained, mostly from smaller worlds that had nowhere else to go. The crystal walls still showed the symbols of every species in the Galactic Accords. Human writing mixed with Zephyrian script and Meridian flowing text and thousands of other languages. But the delegates who had put those symbols there were gone. Sarah's personal communicator buzzed. She looked at the message and felt her heart sink even further. It was from High Speaker Zarthan. "Ambassador Chun," the message read. It is with great regret that the Zephyrian Empire announces our temporary withdrawal from the Galactic Accords. Recent events have shown that the current galactic order cannot guarantee the safety of our people. We must prioritize Zephyrian lives above all other considerations. We hope you understand." Sarah laughed, but there was no humor in it. Understand? She understood perfectly. The Zephyrians had been humanity's closest allies for over a century. If they were abandoning the Accords, everyone else would follow. She was right. Within an hour, 17 more species had sent similar messages. The Meridians announced armed neutrality. The collective declared they were reassessing their commitments. The Crystal Singers simply stopped responding to communications altogether. Each message was politely worded. Each one expressed regret and sympathy. Each one was a knife in the back of everything humanity had tried to build. Sarah walked to the center of the assembly hall. Her footsteps echoed in the vast empty space. Above her, the ceiling showed a view of the galaxy, with colored lights marking every member world of the Accords. As she watched, the lights began going out one by one. Her communicator buzzed again. This time it was Admiral Torres. "Sarah," he said. His voice sounded tired and old. "I'm getting reports that most of our allies are pulling their fleets back to home systems. The Zephyrians have closed their borders. The Meridians are denying passage to our ships." "How long do we have?" Sarah asked. "The hegemony will reach Earth in 3 weeks. Maybe less if they push their engines hard." Sarah looked around the empty hall. 200 years of careful diplomacy were crumbling around her. All the treaties, all the trade agreements, all the friendships built between species who had never trusted each other before. "What do you need from me?" she asked. "Nothing," Torres sighed. "There's nothing left to negotiate, just dot. Come home, Sarah. Come home before it's too late." But Sarah wasn't ready to give up yet. She sent messages to every remaining delegate on the station. Within an hour, they had gathered in one of the smaller meeting rooms. There were only 43 of them left, representing the species too small or too weak to matter in galactic politics. Ambassador Kethrin of the Tory Confederation was there. His people were peaceful farmers who had learned to fight only because humans taught them how to defend themselves. Delegate Morash from the Singing Stones was there too, her crystalline body ringing softly with nervous harmonics. "We all know why we're here," Sarah said. "The Accords are falling apart. Our bigger allies are abandoning us. But maybe we can still salvage something. Maybe the smaller species can work together." Catherine's bird-like head tilted to one side. "Ambassador Chun, my people owe humans everything. You saved us from raiders. You taught us to build ships and defend our world, but ... What? But we have only 12 ships. 12 small ships against the entire hegemony fleet. We would die in the first few minutes of battle." Delegate Morash chimed in with her crystal voice. "The Singing Stones remember every kindness humanity has shown us. We will sing songs of human bravery until the galaxy ends. But songs cannot stop warships." One by one, the remaining delegates spoke. Each one said the same thing in different ways. They were grateful. They were sorry. They could not help. "We are too small," said Ambassador Vexic of the Wanderer clans. "If we fight, we die. If we die, our children die. We cannot ask our children to die for ideals that the strong species have already abandoned." Sarah felt something break inside her chest. These were the species humanity had spent centuries protecting. The small worlds that had been crushed by larger powers until humans stepped in to help. And even they were walking away. "I understand," she said quietly. "I understand completely." But as the delegates filed out of the room, Kethrin stopped beside her chair. "Ambassador," he said, "there is something you should know, something the Tory Council asked me to tell you." Sarah looked up at him. His large yellow eyes were sad. "We will not fight beside you," he said, "but we will remember. We will remember that humans chose to protect the weak even when it meant dying alone. We will remember that you never asked us to die for you, even at the end. And someday, when the Galaxy has forgotten how to be civilized. We will remember what civilization looked like. He left Sarah sitting alone in the small room. Outside the windows, she could see alien ships departing the station. The great packing bays that had once been full of vessels from hundreds of worlds were emptying rapidly. Sarah's communicator buzzed another message. This one was from the Tory government itself. To the humans of Earth, it read. We thank you for the gift of strength. We thank you for teaching us that small worlds can defend themselves if they have the will to try. We cannot die for ideals that others have abandoned, but we will never forget who taught us to live with dignity. May your children forgive us for what we cannot do. Sarah stood up slowly. She walked back to the main assembly hall and up to the podium where so many species had once gathered to debate and argue, and slowly build something better than what had come before. She activated the station's communication system. Her voice would be broadcast to every world, every ship, every listening post in the galaxy. This is Ambassador Sarah Chun, speaking for the Terran Federation and the United Worlds of Earth, she said. As of this moment, I am formally dissolving the Galactic Accords. The treaty system that has governed interstellar relations for 2 centuries is hereby terminated. She paused, looking out at the empty seats that had once held the hopes of an entire galaxy. The Accords were built on the idea that different species could work together for the common good, that the strong could protect the weak, that justice was more important than survival. We were wrong. Her voice grew harder. The galaxy has chosen fear over friendship. Self-preservation over solidarity? Cowardice over courage? Very well. The Terran Federation recognizes that choice and accepts its consequences. She reached into her jacket and pulled out a small device. The dissolution codes for the entire galactic legal system. With one touch, every treaty would be null. Every trade agreement would be void. Every diplomatic relationship would be severed. Humanity withdraws from galactic civilization effective immediately. We renounce all treaties, we close all diplomatic channels, we end all trade relationships. From this moment forward, each species stands alone. She pressed the button dot across the galaxy, communication networks went dark, trade routes shut down, diplomatic missions packed up and went home. The careful web of relationships that had held hundreds of species together for 2 centuries simply stopped existing on Earth. Admiral Torres received the news while reviewing the final defensive plans for the solar system. His officers looked at him expectantly. Well, asked his second-in-command. What now? Torres was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled, and it was not a nice smile. Now we stop pretending to be civilized, he said. Signal all human commanders. New orders are coming. And someone get me the classified files from the basement, the ones marked Total War Protocols. Sir? Those files haven't been touched in centuries. Then it's time to dust them off, Torres said. The galaxy wanted to. See what happens when humans stop caring about being the good guys. They're about to find out. Admiral Torres stood in the deep basement levels of Earth's military command center. The walls here were thick concrete, built to survive nuclear war. He had not been in these rooms since he was a young officer. Most people forgot these levels even existed. The files he wanted were locked behind 3 different security systems, DNA scanners, voice recognition, quantum encryption keys that only worked when the Terran Federation declared a state of total war. The last time these files had been opened was during the Void Hunter crisis over a century ago. The heavy door slid open with a grinding sound. Inside, rows of data storage units hummed quietly in the darkness. Torres walked to the section marked Species Level Threat Response and pulled out a thick folder. The cover was simple, black plastic with white letters. Total War Protocols Classification Level, Amiga. Below that, in smaller text, for use only when the survival of humanity is threatened. Torres opened the folder and began to read. The first page made him pause. Warning. The following protocols represent the complete abandonment of all moral restraints on warfare. These methods are designed to ensure species survival through any means necessary. Use of these protocols will result in actions that violate every treaty and law of war currently recognized by galactic civilization. Torres turned the page and kept reading. By the time he finished, his hands were shaking. Not from fear, but from a cold anger that started in his chest and spread through his entire body. The protocols were not just about fighting a war. They were about destroying an enemy so completely that they could never threaten humanity again. Every page described methods that no civilized species would ever consider using. Torres closed the folder and walked back to his office. His senior staff was waiting for him. "Gentlemen," he said, "we have new orders. As of now, every human ship, station, and facility is to withdraw from alien space immediately, no exceptions." General Morrison frowned. "Sir? That includes our trade stations, our diplomatic outposts, our refugee assistance programs." "All of it," Torres said. "Bring everyone home. Cut all ties with alien governments. End all humanitarian missions. If it's not human, we don't talk to it." "Admiral," said Colonel Chun, Sarah's younger brother, "that will cause massive disruption. Dozens of species depend on our trade networks. Millions of refugees depend on our aid." Torres looked at him with cold eyes. "Not our problem anymore." The first phase of the withdrawal was economic. Human cargo ships stopped making deliveries. Human-built communication networks shut down. Human medical stations closed their doors to alien patients. Trading posts that had operated for decades simply went dark. The galaxy felt the impact immediately. Food shipments to hungry worlds stopped arriving. Medical supplies ran out on frontier planets. Communication between distant systems became impossible without human relay stations on the Zephyrian homeworld. High Speaker Zarthan watched economic reports flood in. His people had relied on human trade for over 100 years. Suddenly, their factories had no raw materials. Their farms had no fertilizer. Their hospitals had no medicine. "Can we replace the human supply chains?" he asked his economic advisor. "Not quickly," the advisor replied. "Human logistics networks connected 400 systems. Building new ones will take years. Maybe decades?" Zarthan felt a chill. The humans were not just fighting the hegemony. They were punishing everyone who had abandoned them. The second phase was industrial. Every human world became a war factory. Civilian production stopped completely. Luxury goods, entertainment systems, personal vehicles, all of it was abandoned. The only things coming off human assembly lines were weapons, ammunition, and warships. But these were not the same kinds of weapons humans had built before. The old human military had followed galactic laws of war. They used weapons that could disable enemy ships without killing their crews. They avoided targeting civilian areas. They tried to minimize casualties even among their enemies. The new weapons were different. They were designed to kill, to destroy, to spread fear. Dr. Elizabeth Harper worked in a secret facility on Mars. She had spent her career developing medical treatments and life support systems. Now she was building something else entirely. "The nanobots will target the nervous system," she explained to Torres during a video call. "They spread through air, water, even touch contact. Once they're in an alien's body, they shut down all neural activity within hours." "Casualties?" Torres asked. 100% fatality rate. "No cure, no treatment. No way to stop them once they're released." Torres nodded. "Production timeline?" 6 months for the first batch, but Admiral, these weapons, they violate every biological warfare treaty in the galaxy. The galaxy broke those treaties when they left us to die alone," Torres said. "Keep working." The third phase was the darkest of all. Small teams of humans began appearing in unexpected places throughout the galaxy. They did not wear uniforms. They did not announce themselves. They moved like ghosts through alien space. Commander Sarah Voss led one of these teams. She had volunteered for the black operations after her home colony was destroyed in the hegemony's first attack. Her parents, her brothers, her childhood friends, all of them were dead. She had nothing left to lose. Her mission was simple: destroy everything that kept alien civilization running. Her team's first target was a Hegemony supplied depot in the Orcs system, but they did not attack it directly. Instead, they waited and watched for 3 weeks. They learned the schedules. They mapped the security systems. They identified every weakness, then they struck. They did not use bombs or energy weapons. They used construction drones, the kind used to build space stations. But these drones had been reprogrammed. Instead of building, they cut. They sliced. Through the depot's support structures with surgical precision, the depot did not explode. It simply came apart, slowly, quietly, like a building being carefully demolished. By the time the hegemony guards realized what was happening, half the station was already floating debris. The guards never saw the humans who did it. The construction drones looked like normal maintenance equipment. Until it was too late, Voss's team hit 17 more targets over the next month. Supply convoys that simply vanished. Communication satellites that stopped working. Mining operations that broke down for no apparent reason. The hegemony began to realize they were fighting an enemy they could not see or catch. They're massive. Warships were useless against opponents, who struck from the shadows and disappeared before anyone could respond. Warcast Commander Vexel stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at reports that made no sense. His forces were winning every battle, but somehow they were losing the war. 17 supply stations destroyed, his aide reported. No survivors, no witnesses. No evidence of how it was done. Human special forces? Vexel asked. Unknown. Sir, we've never seen tactics like this before. Vexel studied the tactical displays. Red marks showed the locations of attacks. They formed no pattern he could understand. The humans seemed to be striking at random, but the effect was devastating. His forces were running out of supplies. His communication networks were failing. His logistics chains were breaking down. They fight like cowards, he said, hiding in the shadows instead of facing us in honest battle. But even as he said it, Vexel felt doubt creeping into his mind. This was not cowardice. This was something worse. The humans had stopped trying to win clean battles. They were trying to destroy the hegemony's ability to function as a civilization on Earth. Admiral Torres received daily reports from the Black Ops teams. Each report was a list of targets destroyed, systems disrupted, enemy capabilities reduced. The numbers were impressive, but Torres was not satisfied. We're hurting them, he told his staff, but we're not breaking them. They still have their main fleets? They still control their home systems? Sir, said Colonel Chun, the Black Ops teams are requesting permission for Phase 4 operations. Torres was quiet. Phase 4 was the final stage of the total war protocols. It meant abandoning the last pretense of civilized warfare. It meant using weapons and tactics that would horrify even humanity's enemies. Approved, Torres said. Send the authorization codes. Tell the teams they are cleared for unrestricted operations. Across the galaxy, human teams received their new orders. The last chains of restraint were removed. The last rules of war were discarded. Humanity stopped pretending to be civilized and embraced something much darker. The galaxy was about to learn what hell looked like when humans stopped caring about being the good guys. Admiral Torres stood in the ruins of what had once been Nexus Station's diplomatic chamber. The crystal walls were cracked and dark. The seats where 400 species had once gathered to build peace were empty and covered in dust. But the communication system still worked. Torres activated the quantum transmitter. His message would reach every inhabited world in the galaxy, every ship, every station. Every being capable of receiving signals would hear what he had to say. This is Admiral Marcus Torres of the Terran Defense Force, he began. His voice was calm and cold. I speak for humanity, for Earth, for every human world that still exists. He paused, looking directly into the camera. His eyes held no mercy. 200 years ago, humanity chose to join galactic civilization. We believed in peace. We believed in cooperation. We believed that different species could work together for the common good. We were wrong. Across the galaxy, beings stopped what they were doing to listen. On the Zephyrion homeworld, High Speaker Zarthan sat in his crystal chamber with his council around him. They all watched Torres's face on their screens. We protected those who could not protect themselves, Torres continued. We built trade networks that connected hundreds of worlds. We created laws that all species could follow. We made peace where there had been only war. On Meridia, the Depth Lords gathered in their deepest councils. Their bioluminescent patterns showed fear and regret as they listened. And when our children were murdered, you watched. When our colonies burned, you counted the cost of helping us. When we needed you most, you chose your own safety over justice. In the hive worlds of the collective, billions of insect minds processed Torres's words. They calculated, they analyzed. They understood. You abandoned us because you thought we were weak. You believed that peace made us soft. You forgot that humanity's civilization was not weakness, it was choice. Torres's voice grew harder. Today you learn what happens when humanity stops making that choice. The transmission ended. For a moment, the galaxy was silent. Then the reports started coming in. The first came from the Hegemony home system. Warcast Commander Vexthal was aboard his flagship when his sensors detected massive explosions on the planet below. Not nuclear explosions, something else. Something that made the very atmosphere catch fire. Report. He shouted at his crew. Sir, multiple detonations across the planet's surface. The explosions appear to be chemical. Something is burning the oxygen itself. Vexthal watched his homeworld burn. The fires spread like living things, consuming everything they touched. Cities, forests, even the oceans began to boil. His people ran screaming from flames that could not be put out. How? He whispered. His science officer's voice shook as he answered. The humans seeded our atmosphere with compounds that turn oxygen into plasma when activated. Every breath of air has become fuel for the fire. Vexthal had conquered 47 worlds. He had seen every kind of weapon, but he had never seen anything like this. The humans were not just destroying his planet. They were making it impossible for any living thing to exist there. Similar reports came from every hegemony world. Not just the military targets, not just the government centers. Every planet where the Scar lived was burning with the same impossible fires, but the fires were just the beginning. On Hegemony Station 7, the largest military base outside their home system, Commander Kralmoth received an urgent message from his orbital defense platforms. Enemy ships were approaching. But when he looked at the tactical displays, he saw nothing. Where are they? He demanded. Unknown, sir. We're detecting massive energy signatures, but no visual contact. Then the lights went out. Emergency power kicked in, casting red shadows through the corridors. Kralmoth ran to the main observation deck and looked outside. Space around the station was empty. But as he watched, sections of the station began disappearing, not exploding, not burning, simply ceasing to exist. Entire decks vanished as if they had never been built. Sir, his communications officer called out. We're receiving a transmission. The main screen flickered to life. A human woman appeared. She was young, with short dark hair and cold eyes. Behind her, Kralmoth could see the bridge of a ship he did not recognize. Commander Kralmoth, the woman said. I am Captain Lisa, Park of the Terran vessel Retribution. You are watching your station die. Impossible, Kralmoth said. Our sensors show no ships. Captain Park smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Your sensors cannot detect us because we exist in a different dimensional phase. We are here, but not here. Present, but invisible. We can touch your reality, but you cannot touch ours. As she spoke, more sections of the station vanished. Kralmoth realized that the humans were literally cutting his station apart from a dimension he could not see or reach. How? He asked. Humanity has had 200 years to study dimensional physics, Park said. We shared our knowledge freely with our allies. We used it to build better communication systems, better transportation networks. Now we use it to build weapons that exist outside your reality. The observation deck began to dissolve around Kralmoth. He felt a strange tingling sensation as his own body started to fade. Wait, he called out. "We can negotiate." No, Park said simply. "You cannot." Kralmuth ceased to exist. His station ceased to exist. His entire fleet ceased to exist. They did not die. They simply stopped being real. The dimensional weapons were only part of humanity's answer. Across hegemony space, other horrors were unleashed. Biological weapons that rewrote DNA, turning the Scar's own bodies against them. Nanotechnology that consumed metal and electronics, reducing mighty warships to empty husks. Gravitational bombs that collapsed stars and erased entire solar systems, but the worst weapons were not the ones that killed. They were the ones that left the Scar alive to suffer. On the industrial world of Corax Prime, the hegemony's main weapons manufacturing center, the humans released something they called the Grey Death. It was not a disease. It was not a poison. It was a technology that made all energy sources stop working. Fusion reactors went cold. Plasma weapons became useless metal. Even simple chemical batteries died. The planet was left with billions of Scar warriors who had no power for their cities, no fuel for their ships, no energy for their life support systems. They did not die quickly. They died slowly in the dark as their civilization crumbled around. The Warcast Commander Vexthal watched it all from his flagship. His mighty fleet was powerless to stop what was happening. They could not fight enemies they could not see. They could not defend against weapons that existed outside reality. They could not even understand what was being done to them. "Signal the humans," he ordered. "Request negotiation. Offer surrender." His communications officer looked up with haunted eyes. "Sir, they are not responding to any communications. They are not taking prisoners. They are not accepting surrender." Vexthal understood then. This was not a war. This was an extermination. The humans were not trying to defeat the hegemony. They were trying to erase it completely. The end came 3 months later. Vexthal's flagship was the last hegemony vessel still operational. His homeworld was a dead ball of ash. His colonies were empty ruins. His people were extinct except for a few thousand survivors that the humans had relocated to primitive farming worlds under armed guard. Captain Park's ship materialized in front of him. This time she appeared in normal space where he could see. "Her Warcast Commander Vexthal," she said. "You wanted to show the galaxy what happens when peace fails. Congratulations, you succeeded." Vexthal looked at her through his screen. The mighty warrior who had conquered 47 worlds was broken. His red eyes held only defeat. "What do you want?" he asked. "Nothing," Park said. "You have nothing left to give. Your species is finished? Your empire is dust? Your legacy is a cautionary tale about what happens when someone makes humanity choose between civilization and survival." Vexthal's ship was transported to a small agricultural world at the edge of known space. He spent his remaining years working in the fields, growing food under the watch of human guards. Sometimes young Scar would ask him about the old days, about the great hegemony and their mighty fleets. He would tell them to forget, to never speak of war or conquest or the natural order of strong ruling weak, because somewhere in the darkness, between stars, humanity was watching, and if they ever decided that the galaxy needed another lesson, there would be no one left to remember what civilization looked like. 50 years later, the galaxy was a very different place. New species achieved spaceflight and sent out diplomatic missions. They found humans still in their corner of space, trading carefully and speaking little, and in the deepest archives of every government, locked behind the highest security, were files labeled the human example, files that every leader was required to read, files that reminded them all of one simple truth: some species, when pushed too far, do not simply die. They take the galaxy's faith and civilization with them.